We will now move on to a special event about culture, art, and national resilience. First, we will watch a short 3-minute video and then we will continue. $13,000 ליטרות על אגם שוב הצליח להגיע לשילוב מדהים של צבע, תנועה, מוזיקה וטכנולוגיה.
To create a constant becoming, Yehovah, the Hebrew meaning of life, of constant.
זהו התהליך מתמשך. התהליך מתמשך בחיים הוא החיים, והחיים הם שינוי מתמיד. על המסך מקרינים סרטון ומוזיקה נשמעת.
The New Orleans Holocaust Memorial was under
המיצג לזכר השואה נחשף היום. הוא מראה, מנציח בעצם את זכר השואה ו6 מיליון היהודים שנספו בשואה. 9 לוחות האלומיניום המרכיבים את המיצג בעצם מייצגים סוגים שונים או שלבים שונים בשואה. יעקב אגם רצה להראות את האפלה ואת האימה של השואה וגם את השגשוג לאחר שהיא תמה. We will now have a conversation between two brilliant and creative people, each of whom has a reputation internationally. Mr. Yaacov Agam is a sculptor and experimental artist whose sculptures are well known to all and are across the globe. And the Professor Alex Mintz is Provost of IDC Herzliya and has an international name for himself in decision-making and strategic decision-making. But not many people know how artistic Professor Mintz is, and alongside his exceptional academic achievements, he is very educated in art as well. So these multidisciplinary men will be talking about culture, art, and national resilience, and it is my pleasure to invite to this stage, and here they are already, Mr. Yaacov Agam and Professor Alex Mintz. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Weitzman. Well, first of all, Mr. Agam, congratulations, happy birthday. It's just in the next few days. But now around the world, Asia, Australia, and of course all over Europe, this is a conference really that talks about national resilience and the various social, economic, security aspects with our aspiration for peace and national unity. So I chose a number of your masterpieces out of your truly impressive, world-embracing repertoire. And I wanted to ask you about their meaning in these contexts of resilience. We have this enormous one that from Strasbourg, from the European Parliament. You can see it here as well. What is its meaning in these contexts that I just mentioned? At the time, Benishiao, who was the Speaker of the Knesset, he said that there's a kind of problem that needs to be solved. They wanted at the European Parliament in Strasbourg, the Conseil d'Europe, they wanted a gift for the building that was refused to be accepted because of Israel. Israel is only an observer, they're not actually a member. So they wanted something creative that would stand and somehow despite their resistance and objection. So I came with an idea to an architect, by the way, who hated Jews. And I came with an idea, and on one side I put all the flags who were actually members of the European Council. And when they open up, they turn into all the colors of the rainbow. And I wrote the words peace, peace in between. And someone came and did a critique. And they said, okay, on condition that there'll be nothing there that would show that it's a gift from Israel or that it is from Israel. In other words, it has to be totally anonymous. And before it was sent, the actual Israeli ambassador in Paris and the Austrian and British foreign ministers and a couple of others came to examine it to see if it's kosher. And of course, it all went well. And then I said, no, God forbid this, I wouldn't do it. I'm not hiding anything. There's nothing concealed here surreptitiously behind it. And I showed them the word shalom, peace as well. And I came in the middle of the night and I actually compiled it, installed it till the morning. And of course, these critiques came and looked at it in the morning. And then in the morning, a journalist from a Jewish paper in Strasbourg, and he started proudly saying, shalom, shalom, proudly. And I thought, boy, there's going to be an explosion here. And at that moment, Alain Poher, the president of the French Senate, came in, and he enthusiastically embraced me, and he said, now Europe exists because they're an artistic manifestation, expression of it, and everyone applauded and it went smoothly. Later on, the president of the European Union then in Strasbourg, Simone Veil, she used this drawing as a Happy New Year card, and it said, a gift from Knesset Israel to the European Council. So you can see that this visual value has a social expression embedded in it, the values that can unite. And as Alain Poher said, yes, Europe exists now. We have artistic expression. Unfortunately, in Judaism, they didn't develop these visual values. We have words and words. Words come from one's mouth. They're connected to the stomach. Mouths and stomachs are connected, after all. The stomach leads it, but the eyes are connected to one's brain, and that is something spiritual. Brain is something creative. And we don't have an artistic expression in Judaism. It wasn't developed. And I looked, we have very important values embodied in Judaism. The first, of course, precept is that one should not make idols according to the commandment. But this is very different, for example, from the Egyptian precepts and commandments. The king, the head, he is omnipotent. He can actually turn entire peoples into slaves and build his palaces. But one cannot overcome time. And the entire Egyptian people concentrated on a struggle against time. The pyramid, to do something that would overcome and override time's limitations. And the Muslims, for example, removed part of their protection of the marbles, and they built temples which actually sort of detrimentally affected it. And if someone dies, and they mummify them. After all, they want to overcome. And in Judaism, it's totally different. Someone dies, you're immediately buried, sort of, from earth. Earth came, earth you return. And so when there was a command to go to Egypt and to release them from their incarceration, they said whatever will come will come. And time that we live in today, which is one, from a social point of view, it is one of the most fixed issues. That Judaism said that it cannot be reconstructed. Time is always something unpredictable. And that's what I added to art. This whole worldview, the Jewish worldview, that is unexpected and can change and fluctuates, I added to my art, and not Picasso and not Chagall did any of that. They didn't add this element of time and the unexpectedness of it. They didn't actually do it. I think the most fixed, permanent thing is the changing. Now, in addition to that, I want to talk about the fan. You can see it here. Yes. Just before 50 years independence of the State of Israel, before we celebrated it. I think it was Ron Lauder gave a very big contribution, and there was a big event at the United Nations. Abba Eban came, Arik Sharon came, and all the top echelons of the United Nations, and I put this fan on the table, and in the fan you can see the various actual countries that voted for Israel. And then if you move this fan somewhat, then you can see the rainbow in the sky. And this rainbow, and after a slight delay, and then you can see the menorah, which actually embodies, it's not just a candlestick that you can put candles on. The menorah, in its frame, in its shape and meaning, is a manifestation of the meaning of the actual temple, our freedom, our independence. In other words, it embodies the values of Judaism. So it has a value encapsulated within it, and it conveys that meaning that menorah symbolizes the values of freedom and liberty. And then afterwards you see a Magen David, and then you also see the symbol here, the symbol of Israel. In the Herzliya conference here at the IDC 2015, our president spoke about the 4 tribes and the importance to mediate between them and unite them. When your monumental masterpiece of Jacob's Ladder, how would you say, how does this all merge and fuse and blend? When they built the president's residence, the architect asked me to create an artistic masterpiece within it that should be accepted by all the strata of society, secular, religious, etc. So I created Jacob's Ladder, which symbolizes the links, the bond between man and his land and the heavens, and also the blessing as well from that dream wherein Israel will be then given, Israel, from, the times, the biblical times. So in the president's residence, it crosses the building really from the ground to the uppermost limits of it, to where the offices are. And the same in Binyanei Ha'umah, the big concert hall and conference center in Jerusalem. It also, the actual work unites the tangible significance, spiritual importance of the symbol, and you can see it. So when I was on the scaffolding, someone asked me, where do these steps lead to? And I said, this brings us all the way up to the sky, to the heavens. And I did that 60 years ago nearly. So if you now look at Binyanei Ha'omah in the foyer, on one side you see day, and on the other side you see night, and all those fluctuations of 24 hours. And people said, it won't last. Well, believe me, it has done. Now, the next work of art has a very special meaning embodied again. Jacob's Ladder I did in the Guggenheim Museum. It's 18 meters altitude there in the center. I'm now doing another one that will be in the Yaacov Agam Museum in Rishon LeZion, because as you come in, you can see a Magen David, a Star of David, each one being in a different color, just like our society, one from Russia, one from Yemen, one from the United States. Our society is such a kind of melting pot, and they're all perhaps split off in different directions. But when you come close into the center, they all become one Star of David. By the way, it's very highly recommended to go to this new museum. It'll be inaugurated at the end of next week. And therefore, I would like to say that we in Judaism, to my chagrin, we didn't develop these visual values. Usually it's things connected to writing, and writing remains permanent, fixed. But in reality, whatever you look at will never be repeated, because our eyes are connected to our brains and our mouths, to our stomachs, and they're two totally different things. So when you talk and when you read, there's an absurd, because when you write simultaneously as something, because the mouth cannot do it at the same time. You can actually give it an adjective saying it's beautiful, but when you write it, it's only one singular thing. But when you actually use your eyes, I can see 4 or 5 things simultaneously, but our writing is narrowed down to our speech, and that's absurd, because if you write the letter shin, the S in Hebrew, and then you add another letter, then it'll become just one or perhaps 2 things. But if you add a few letters in the middle, something that you can't actually say very quickly, but which means peace, then when you see it, you can see how it is all blended and how peace can actually be a vision that will come true, because you'll see it with your eyes. And now, the visit of Anwar Sadat. I spoke to Menachem Begin a number of times, and we spoke about Anwar Sadat in '78. He wasn't really interested in coming, and how can one bring him? So I said to Menachem Begin, we have 2 different cultures. We've got a Jewish culture and a Muslim culture. And we always in the Muslim culture, we lived peacefully with the prayers. Things were written during the Muslim time of regime in Spain. And when we had to leave Spain, then, for example, the Muslims protected us. There's an understanding between Islam and Judaism. They are very close. If you read the Quran and the Bible, and you'll see it's very similar. It's about Moses. So there's approximation between the two. The Muslims also apply, and Muslim, by the way, the Islam do substantiate this visual side of it, just like Judaism done. You won't find of anything. It is always perhaps permanent shapes, but it's not something which emanates from the living shape. But they related to art in all earnest. It is part and parcel of their culture and religion. But in Judaism, no, there's no access or understanding. And it's so important. I mean, one doesn't actually see it there. It's as if they are blocking half one's brain, because if you can't see it and absorb it, then it doesn't exist. So therefore, I proposed to Begin that he should take a Star of David, the symbol, Kohav, and then he should take a symbol of Islam and blend the two, fuse them in harmony. And they could live side by side. So Sadat saw it. We sent him a photograph and the visual, of course, immediately communicated with him. And he came to Beersheba. And in Beersheba, I gave one to Begin and one to Sadat. And they both held the same symbol of peace and fraternity. And of course, in the White House, I also gave one to the President of the United States, and I thought that this was very symbolic, and this will always remind him of the conflict. Yes, monumental. The next masterpiece is truly monumental. Let us see it on film, and tell me what the actual meaning is. Yes, in the Torah, we have something of vital importance. We look at the rainbow in the sky. God gave us that rainbow after the greatest destruction of the temple, because a rainbow is understood by all. You do not need words for that. It's a language that can separate between people, but this can actually connect between peoples for a better world. What is the rainbow? It has all the contrasts. It has yellow and purple. It has blue and red. But the colors and the hues amongst them, they relate in tolerance to each other. They accept the different, and they create harmony. They create togetherness and completion. So if we can relate in tolerance and patience, then peace will come too. So I took the Torah and I awarded it an expression of the entire rainbow with the same meanings that we see in the sky, because that is our contract, our agreement with the Almighty Creator. So if you look at the French and the German, they fought on both sides with millions of fatalities. Now they are different, perhaps, yes, but they are very tolerant towards each other. And in Europe, if you look at the British and the French, who never understood each other, that's the French ambassador told me in Great Britain, said that there's an understanding between the French and the British. Because when a cat or a dog wants to actually show its joy, it immediately wags its tail. And within the symbol, that's how it symbolizes its happiness to welcome you. But for example, when someone is attacking the French, then you see that a misunderstanding can actually emanate from that lack of understanding rather than from the content. So let us now see the next work of art. This sculpture, Gabi, I put the rainbow in the sky, and I separated 9 parts of it, and then I put a smaller sculpture beside it that when you touch it, you can see, then the monumental sculpture will then immediately blend in with the same change that I have made to the small one. It will immediately get that same change. And I let the audience that comes, in other words, all spectators and observers, are allowed to touch it, and the big one will coincide with those same movements. So the French ambassador in the United Nations took me, and the Secretary General enabled me to put it at the entrance to the United Nations, giving people the freedom of touching that symbol of the rainbow in the sky. And any country who joins the idea of peace will have such a sculpture. And when I touch in New York, then it will change it, for example, in Israel, in China, or wherever, in such a way so all those countries that strive for peace will be able to, it'll be like a conveyor belt of a sort of artistically conveying it over time and place. And my first statue will be in the Agam Museum, and anyone who wants to can touch these rainbow hues sculpture, and then I'm going to transfer it to the United Nations perhaps next year, and then all those countries who will want to join this blessing of that rainbow will be able to share in it. And what you can see just above us is in the Agam Museum in Rishon LeZion, and the audience is invited. Thank you very much to Mr. Agam.